I'm Amanda, and this is Not Your Granny's Quilt Show. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's show. How are you? I hope you're good. I'm good. I have a fantastic guest on today. It's Loni of Havin So Much Fun. She is a fantastic sewist. She makes a bunch of her own clothes. She shares them on her Instagram, and she has recently released a pattern for a fanny pack convertible over the shoulder bag that has all the pockets and snaps and zips that you could ever want in a fanny. So go check that out. And otherwise, let's welcome Loni and get into this conversation. I'm so excited that you agreed to join me today. I've been perusing all of your makes and your awesome projects, and I'm just fascinated. Like, I read that you started really sewing in 2013 so you could make your daughter's bed linens.
Yeah.
And what prompted you to keep at it and start making clothing and all that?
So yes, it was when I was pregnant with my daughter and I was thinking about, setting up the nursery, and your options are like baby pastel pink. And that's not my first choice. So I went more with like a coral, right?
Mhm.
And at that time it wasn't a super popular color, so we couldn't get it at Pottery Barn or whatever. So I went to Joann's and picked out, some coordinating cottons, and there was probably a fleece. I didn't know anything about actual fabric at the
Mm.
time. I know made some bad choices for what I wanted to make with the fabric, but I got a sewing machine off Amazon and I got fabric at Joann's and made things that were mostly rectangles. And right. And then
Yeah.
it goes from there, because it's a huge world of amazing stuff that people are making. And with the social media, so much gets shared that it's good and bad, right? It's
Hmm.
very inspiring and also overwhelming. And so linens, and then simple things for other mom friends, like
Hmm.
little kids clothes. Probably the first like commercial indie pattern designer that I bought patterns from was Schwinn Designs.
Okay.
So I feel like buying her patterns and sewing those little clothes for my daughter, that's how I learned to sew clothes, because
Okay.
the indie the indie pattern designers put a lot more detail into their patterns than I think what people are used to from paper patterns,
Hmm.
because people are always super confused by those instructions. They're sometimes really vague depending on the designer.
Hmm.
But with social media, and the indie pattern designers, there's so much support. A lot of designers have Facebook groups, so you can go and ask questions, and then you can share what you've made. Um, so
Yeah.
it really snowballed from there.
Yeah.
And I mostly sew for myself because it's a lot more rewarding than sewing for a little person who's gonna say what's wrong with it, like it's the wrong shade of purple. And they didn't want the unicorns this time. They wanted the butterflies on it. So
Right.
sometimes it takes a few months to convince other people to appreciate what you've made.
Right.
You sew for yourself. It's really rewarding. So
Yeah. It's like instant gratification for your own self. You're like, oh, look what I made. I love it.
yes.
Because I picked it.
You know what went into making it. Like sometimes it's harder than other times. Sometimes, it's a quick thing.
Hmm.
Um, but there's that like personal satisfaction from crafting it with your own hands, and then so
Yeah. So
a lot of fun.
what's the most prized piece that you've made for yourself so far?
Oh. Um, Probably jeans, sewing your own jeans.
Mm.
it gets to be extremely rewarding. It's hard with clothes because a lot of them wear out, and you don't always have them for a decade. But some things I do still have around that I've made, but also, your body can go through changes. But
Mm-hmm.
it's nice that you can always just make exactly what you want. A lot of people are for sure intimidated by the idea of sewing jeans, but
I
it's
am.
probably it's probably not any harder than making a quilt with 6,400 little triangles.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the patterns always break it down to exactly how to cut everything out, and then
Yeah.
step by step there's just there's 150 steps instead of 4.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can do anything. You can
Yeah.
make anything with a pattern. So
I think that would be really cool. I always have struggled buying pants, like just my dimensions are wild and
no, it's that they make them in
right.
wild proportions that aren't realistic.
There you go. Yes.
It's
Thank you
not
for
you.
rephrasing that
It's
for me.
not
My
you.
body is normal. Mass
Mhm.
producing a pair of pants that's supposed to fit everybody is fucked up. So I
100%. 100%.
I can
Yes.
imagine sewing a pair of pants that fits you exactly, fits your body, your dimensions is like heaven.
Yeah. So
Ooh, I might try it because I really do hate buying pants. I hate it.
almost everybody does, right?
Hmm.
And before I know I knew how to sew, but I was probably still intimidated by jeans
Hmm.
and some more complicated clothing things. But a friend and I think it was a birthday present for her, but I backed in like a Kickstarter campaign that
Mm.
was for like custom made jeans. And so they
Oh.
were $100 a piece, but this, like, oh, it's a lot of money, but also like they were supposed to fit you like a glove. Anyway, the Kickstarter, like, I wish I could remember, good or bad, that I don't remember the name. They were able to supply a lot of jeans for folks, but they kind of went under before they really produced
Oops.
something for everyone. And it kind of just fell through the cracks in my email that they were giving like last call. If you want a pair, you've got to like act.
Mm.
But it was this mail thing where they would send you like a muslin, like something to try, and then they would adjust it from there for you.
Oh.
They were trying to figure out how to have more size options for people so that jeans that were ready to wear were closer to your body.
Hmm.
But I never got the jeans, but now I can. My friend didn't ever get that birthday present.
Oh no.
um, but I can make
Yeah.
them myself now, so that's
And
fun.
probably once you do that first pair, it's like opens the floodgates of like, oh my God, I can do this.
Right, I can do this. It's not that hard. The zipper is probably the
Mm.
most intimidating part because it's not, well, it is mostly straight, but
Hmm.
but other than that, the sewing is very straightforward.
Mm.
You do
A
the
little
fly.
encouraging. I don't sew clothes. Like I've barely made, let's see, when have I made? Nothing. I've made a caftan because it's a giant rectangle with armholes.
Armholes and a head
Yeah.
hole.
And a head hole. I made Katarina's pattern that she has on her blog.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was easy. And I made it out of Ruby Star fabric because I got it super cheap and I had like 4 yards of it. And I was like, why not? And then of course I like shoved it in my closet because I'm like, where am I gonna wear this?
Right. So that's probably what happens when a lot of people start thinking about sewing their own clothes because they have a lot of quilting cotton around, probably
Hmm.
because it's easy to start collecting.
Uh-huh.
Um, so it's tempting to use your quilting cotton and make clothes. And there definitely are things that quilting cotton for clothes works well for, but
Hmm.
there's a lot of other fabrics that you kind of have to get into to really make clothes. And so
Yeah.
that's what I'm going to blame my large collection of textiles on, is that I need different kinds, the stretchy ones, the
Mm-hmm.
the fuzzy on the back ones,
Yeah. Yeah.
different
No, and
kinds.
I think whatever your craft is, if it's in textiles, like you do kind of need a stash in some
Oh,
ways.
yeah. Um, for me, like, I live in the middle of nowhere, kind of
Mm,
Ohio, and we do have a Joann's and maybe a couple of other, like, smaller little quilt shops.
mhm,
But yeah, it's quilting cotton. So then there's a whole world of online fabric shopping.
mm.
So it was easier to have it, like, and feel it and know it about it once you start collecting it.
Yeah.
And then you realize, why did I buy that? But
Mhm.
that's a different story.
Yeah.
But I was thinking that if nothing else, I could maybe convince a whole lot of your listeners to sew their own clothes now too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I hope so.
Do.
I mean,
We're gonna get you a pair of jeans within the next year, okay?
okay. I really want to. I'm committed. 2023 is going to be the year of the Janes.
Jeans.
I'm going to make them.
Okay.
Gonna make a pair. And my mom, like she's been sewing apparel since she was a child. And so I know if I ran into any snags, I could always be like, help you. But I don't know that she's ever made a pair of jeans or pants, maybe pants. But anyway, yeah. So like I do have resources and I have help, but it's just, I get so anxious about it. Even just making quilts, even though I've made like a million, I still get so anxious about starting something new. And like so many of my personal quilts are just like half square triangles because it's easy and I don't have to think about it too hard or like try something new and scary. But, you know, with our business, we've had to try a lot of different things and I've pushed myself outside of my comfort zone a lot of times with quilting. So I'm like, why can't I do it with other sewing? I don't know.
Yeah. Buy the pattern, buy the fabric, one
Yeah.
step at a time. You there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll need to get some recommendations on good jean patterns because I don't know. I don't know what I'm looking for in apparel patterns, but like, yeah, what do you look for in apparel patterns when you're looking at getting one?
So number one, I mean, you're gonna want to look at the style. Like, don't buy something just because it's the popular one. If it's
Right.
not, if you like low rise skinny jeans, but everybody else is sewing, flare, whatever, some other style, like, get the one that's your style. Um, it's nice if there's a Facebook group for support. There's oftentimes a lot more discussion to help people troubleshoot, but you can also get that if you post on Insta, like, hey, I'm
Mm-hmm.
on certain step, and get all the right hashtags so that people see it. And people are so willing to help. That's the amazing thing. I mean,
Yeah.
someone will always step in, and years later you think, I can't believe I asked that question. Like, what a new idiot I was, but like, nobody remembers but me.
Right. You're the only one holding that in your memory. Yeah.
Yeah, keeping that little goof or whatever. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and it's like you don't know until you know, right? So unless you ask the question or get out there and try it, you just don't know. And I think it's the same thing with quilting. Like if I've ever asked a question or gone directly to the pattern designer to ask a question, it's like I get help, I get the help I'm looking for, or I get the answer I need from the person who designed the pattern to tell me like, oh yeah, do this little thing. And then it's like, oh, then the whole thing works and it's totally fine. But I love that about the online community of sewists is like everybody
So,
wants to help each other.
yeah, they're so willing to share knowledge or tips and things. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, that's super cool. So, has it been a while since you've made a quilt, or have you ever made a quilt?
I have probably only made like two dedicated quilts that are finished. Um, but I also like FPP,
Mm,
and incorporating sometimes little bits of that into something bigger that's apparel.
mhm,
Um, The first, at least as far as I can remember, the first quilt I made was from my son's. He's my oldest. He's 11 now, but his
Mm,
baby clothes. Like I saved that first year of clothes um, with the intention that I guess it would be a quilt. I don't know. I mean,
yeah.
what else are we saving all these things for?
Right. You're like, I don't know. Put it in a box.
And I didn't get a pattern. I just decided triangles would be easy. So this is an assortment of knits. A lot of baby clothes, particularly, are knits.
Hmm.
But then he had some other little shirts. But I remember trying to figure out, and I isosceles, all three
Hmm.
sides the same length and all the angles the same. So I cut what an isosceles triangle out of cardboard, and that was my pattern piece, and just went to town cutting up tiny baby clothes, and then made them into rows, and then sewed all the rows together. And I think I understand now when people make quilts from clothes, they probably put some interfacing or something on the back.
Absolutely.
So
Uh-huh.
the knits not I didn't do that. I just did whatever I wanted. And I
Mhm.
remember, I think they're closed now, but there was a tiny little quilting shop down in Belpre, and I remember going in and being like, "Well, can you quilt this for me? Because I don't even know what that means." Kind of thing. And like I'm scared to quilt it. Like I had it all pieced together, and I remember showing her pictures, and she was like, "Oh wow, look at you! You got all those points all lined up so nice." And I was like, "Okay, I did something right."
That's like 90% of the battle in quilting. So good job.
Right, right. So I got the points lined up. So she was really encouraging and was just like, no, just do straight lines, a quarter
Yeah.
inch from each seam, and you're good. And I didn't make it like a standard size or anything, but
Yeah.
I quilted that on like my regular machine.
Hmm.
Probably didn't use a walking clip because I think I hate those.
Yeah.
I mean, I do hate them. They're clunky and loud and terrible. And maybe I have a cheap one, but I don't know. Um, and I remember we lived in a different house when I was binding it. And I remember my husband giving me a hard time about like always being on my phone or being distracted or something. And he pulls up a picture of me supposedly distracted and not paying attention to what was going on around me. I was hand stitching that binding
Oh,
with my phone. I was binding that quilt. So
like that does take a lot of focus and concentration because you're trying not to stab yourself for one thing.
give a shit. I know I didn't cut the binding on the bias either. Like it was
Mm,
straight cut, but um,
yeah.
I learned a lot.
Yeah. You know, that's it's so funny. Like when people are like, oh, I just made this and I don't know what I'm doing. And it's like, yeah, but you did a great job. Like, I don't know. I think there's no real barrier to entry when it comes to like you have to have X amount of knowledge to start making a quilt. And like there are things like having, stabilizer or interfacing on those knit fabrics would have made your life a little easier, but
I
you
think
still,
yeah, I probably stretched those corners to match better.
I mean, honestly, and it doesn't like it's not
Yeah.
foolproof. It's still hard. Like we make a ton of memory quilts out of baby clothes and adult clothes and all different types of fabrics and we just mix them all together, but and the interfacing helps, but it's not foolproof. Those shirts and things still stretch and you just have to be you just got to stretch them. You just got to make them go where you want them to go.
Or Tim Gun it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's so funny. Well, that's cool that like you were able to pull something together and just make it work. And I mean, and that's such a cool piece to have that,
Yeah, I said I would make one for each of the kids. That hasn't so much happened yet.
yeah. It's a lot of work.
Oh, for sure. For
Yeah.
sure. It's hours and hours and hours that,
Mhm.
unless you've made a quilt, you don't appreciate it,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah. And I think too, like it can take more time just to cut out the pieces of a quilt than it would take for you to make a whole garment. Like
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
just the cutting of all the different materials down, and especially with clothing, because you have to like you know, you have to miss certain spots of it, or you can only cut a certain amount out of the piece of clothing because it's only so big, or it can be a little trickier than just cutting out the pieces of a apparel pattern. And
I have another funny story for you that just came to mind. What is she's a textile. Tell me the words for the people who design the fabric. A fabric designer.
yeah.
What's her name? Tasha Noel. I
Mhm.
made this adorable little girl's dress
Mhm.
with like a paneled piece that she had. So there were some stripes and some like garland. Anyway, it was all coordinated. It was really cute. And I had shared the back of it, I think, on Instagram. And she was like, "Oh, I love that you made this. It's so wonderful. Can I see the front?"
You're like, no.
And I must have shared it with her privately or something. I know there was a picture of the front, and it was so clearly cut off grain that it was just so embarrassing now. It was so off grain. It was so bad. And that was like, with apparel fabrics, you do want to wash them before you cut and you sew. You don't always necessarily do that with quilts, or you don't want to, because you want them to crinkle and shrink
Mhm.
and be lovely and wonderful. But back when I was just first sewing kids' clothes with quilting cotton, I mean, I just use that fold that's permanently like creased there from being on
Mhm.
as my fold to cut something. And so, it's very embarrassing now to think about how crooked the front of that dress is. But yeah,
That's so funny. You're
I
like,
know
no,
now.
you can't see the
I
front.
learned.
It's a surprise. Yeah.
No, you can't see the front. Sorry.
Joke's on you. It's fine. Yeah. No, I think that's, and I appreciate, I don't know if you've heard of her, but Rada, I interviewed her a couple weeks ago, but she is sewing through fog, and she worked at for Levi's for a long time. So she knows fabric, and so she's been posting a lot of good informational stuff about the weave of fabrics and the different types of fabrics and how they're woven and why it's important to pay attention to weave and like the warp and weft and why fabrics stretch a certain way, or you know, if you're cutting it on the bias, why it's so stretchy. And like I kind of knew those things, but seeing it written down and like looking at the graphics that she's created to put all that together, I was like, oh my God, I really appreciate this, because it's like,
The way she's teaching you about this.
yeah.
Yeah, that
And just, and you know, we chatted about it too, but like, you know, when we're making clothing quilts, or you know, memory quilts, there's all different types of clothing. And so like I kind of feel like I'm getting a lot of learning, practical learning, because I'm not just using quilting cotton, and I'm working with lots of different fabrics that maybe I wouldn't have purchased, but because I'm like, I don't know what to do with that, but I'm using them in quilts for other people and figuring out how to make it work with knits and cottons and fleece and flannel and all these different things. And it's been a really eye-opening learning experience of just like, oh, this kind of fabric doesn't have any stretch, or this kind of fabric is nothing but stretch, and trying to
and
figure out ways.
some stretch out and don't recover
Yeah,
until you
like,
wash them again. Like, yeah. Yeah, there's
yeah.
all of different properties to them. And it depends on how they're woven or knitted, and
Mhm.
also the different kinds of fibers that go into those threads. Fibers, threads. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's a lot to learn.
There is a lot to learn. It's crazy. And it's like, I think too, when I was first quilting, like the very first quilt I ever made was a more complicated pattern, but my friends were helping me, so it was fine. I was just listening to them. And um, but then once I learned how to make half square triangles, I was like, oh, I'm gonna just do this because it's so simple. Well, I would get so frustrated with trying to line things up. And if you can't see closely to the quilt behind me, but this is like the second or third quilt I ever made. And the points are not lined up. There's just so many things wrong with it.
You use a 3-foot rule. I mean, you can't see it from 3 feet away, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why it's like behind me, because then it's 3 feet away from you. So it's good.
More like 2,000 miles or something. I
Yeah,
don't
sure, sure, sure. Yeah, but I didn't understand that, like, because you're cutting those fabrics on the bias to make that angle,
know.
that then it's stretchy. And so it is harder to get things to line up when you're sewing things on the bias. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then I learned I never made borders on with bias seams because I was taught differently, which thank goodness. But then subsequently seeing, people bringing quilts to us with, they've put their borders on with bias seams and it causes so much stretch. And then their borders have all this extra volume in them and we're trying to quilt it in and we're just like, oh my God, just make a straight seam.
You have a ruler?
Yeah. Can you measure? Do you know how inches work? This is, crucial to your craft. But no, I try not to be too judgy about it because a lot of like quilting classes will teach people to do it that way.
Mm.
And I'm like, okay, let's back up a little bit. So thankfully, like, clients that I've talked to or that my mom and I have talked to together, like we just let them know, like, this is why this happened. And then when they bring quilts to us now, it's like they fixed it. So anyway, that's neither here nor there, but just like understanding different fabrics and how they work together and is tricky,
Yeah.
even for apparel sewing, because it's like you have to know how something's going to drape
Oh,
or
yes. And sometimes you want to mix fabrics together that until you do it and you realize like, oh yeah, they're not gonna play nice next to, you're not gonna want to make a shirt that's a combination of denim and rayon.
mm.
Like it's not a good combination. But when you're first starting or thinking about it, you pick all the prettiest fabrics, right? You pick all
Hmm.
the cool prints and all, and then you're stuck with a big stack of them over there. Like, what am I gonna do with those now?
Like, I don't even like it anymore.
I have to make a quilt.
Mm, yeah, why not?
One of the maybe it's I watched a couple of episodes.
Mm,
First one and then I think the second one. And you guys were talking about jelly roll races.
uh-huh.
Um, and I was like, I've not ever made a jelly roll quilt.
Hmm.
But it sounds like a really fun thing to do with friends.
Hmm.
So I had already messaged a couple of them. I'm like, so guys, I want to do this. We're all gonna get a jelly roll. Bring a
Yeah.
machine. I have friends, that have machines. They don't necessarily sew a lot like I
Hmm.
do too
Yeah.
much. But they make Halloween costumes or do projects with their kids. And so we've got
Sure.
some machines between us and we could get some jelly rolls and we could have a good time
Yeah.
dangling them up and
Oh my God. That first initial like length, like it's like 1,600 inches or something like that. Probably more than that. What's 42 times 42?
a big number.
So like 16,000 inches. I don't know. Anyway, um, that initial strip, getting that wrangled and making sure it's not twisted is the trickiest part. But after you get that folded in half and sewn, then it is smooth sailing from there. It's so fun and it's so easy. And like our the ones we did, me and my besties did, we all had the same exact jelly roll. And
Okay.
somehow all of ours turned out slightly different. So I don't know. We watched the Missouri Star tutorial like 50 times, or I did because I didn't know how to, at that point, I didn't know how to do like make a biased seam with the strips because I didn't make my own binding for my first couple quilts. And so then they showed me like, oh, you have to do it this way. And in the video, it looked like she was sewing down the middle of
Mm,
like when you cross the two fabrics, it looked like she was sewing down the middle.
right.
And
So then you've
so
got a 90-degree angle between these, right?
So I was like, oh my gosh, cool. So I like went to open it up and I was like, this isn't right. And I looked at all of them and I was like, oh my God, this isn't right. And I was panicking and I took the whole wad of strips over to Beth's house and I was like, I need you to help me seam rip this. So we sat on her floor and we just went, she started on one end, I started on the other, and we just seam ripped all of them out. And I was like, oh my God, I have to start over and I want to throw up.
Well, that is love and friendship to
Mm.
do that.
Yeah.
For you. I probably would have just cut them out. I don't know
Oh,
if I've had the patience to seam rip all that.
yeah. I couldn't bear, like, we were already going to add like borders to make them bigger. And I just couldn't imagine like cutting that much off of each strip and then ending up with like such a tiny quilt, because I like to make big quilts.
You
But
like big quilts and you cannot lie. I said that.
yeah, it's the
Mhm.
truth. I've said it like 1,000 times, so it's
Oh,
fine.
okay. It's
Yeah.
something other people say too.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, it's honestly, if you know how to like make those bias seams and get those strips together, it's really, because I've subsequently made other jelly roll race quilts and they've been so easy. So I'm excited for you.
Yeah, I think some beer and some jelly rolls, and it
Yeah.
would be a good evening. Fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Ooh, that's so, yeah, it is really fun. So I'm excited for you. And there's so many, I mean, most fabrics you can get in a jelly roll situation. So you just gotta peruse
I'm not
and
go. I'm not gonna go to Joanne.
don't do it. Don't do it. Just order online if you can't get something local, because
I don't. I don't.
Joann's.
I don't want to totally bash you. No, we're not.
No,
Not gonna do that.
they have some good stuff. I just don't appreciate the quality of their fabric
They.
always.
Oh well, especially for apparel stuff. It was like they didn't have much to offer at all, but they really, really, really have come a long way. I think they've got some people
Hmm.
that know apparel behind
Yeah.
the scenes now that are helping them make better decisions about that.
Yeah. I was gonna say their apparel fabrics have noticed have seemed to have like grown and gotten a lot. There's more variety. There's a lot. It seems more intentional as far as like what they're providing there. So
Yeah, and the quality is better. So
that's good. Quilting
yeah.
cotton, not so much. They do every once in a while have some that I'm like, wow, this is actually not, so bad, but I don't know. I know it's like a less painful way to get some cotton and to make projects, because quilting cotton can get really expensive. And so like I'm not bashing that part of it, but I'm also like, how about let's make them not feel like sandpaper? I don't know.
Well, they do you know the story behind them carrying Liberty of London stuff now?
What?
Yeah, I was hoping you could fill me in on
I
the
didn't
story.
even know, because I don't go there very much anymore. I used to go there all the time because I crocheted for a long time and I still do occasionally, but so I was always there buying yarn,
Hmm.
but I rarely go in there anymore. So I haven't even seen, I did see that online they do carry rifle paper fabric, which is what is this quilt behind me mostly. And I love rifle paper.
Who doesn't love rifles? I mean,
I don't know. And if you don't like
uh,
rifle paper, you're not my people. So
we don't have to talk about
yeah,
those people.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's so, I didn't know they were
I,
carrying Liberty.
they right. So that was always in my mind, like
Mm,
the highest tier, like quilting cotton. I don't know
yeah.
if there's something else. I mean, because it's like $38 a yard, right? Is that the
Mm,
usual rate?
hmm.
So I remember seeing people who are making blouses with this stuff, and I'm just like, right? Like, holy cow.
Yeah.
But then you can get it on sale, of course. I'm just wondering,
Mhm.
it's got to be like their own sub-branded Liberty stuff that's made for Joanne, right? Like
Joann's.
it's not Liberty flat out. I don't know.
I don't know either. Now I need
Haven't, I
to
haven't. you got to research that for us.
I'm writing it down so
And
I don't
I need
forget.
to find out about the rifle over there because, yeah.
Yeah. They don't have it in our store here because my mom goes in pretty frequently to just get notions and things. And she sews like, she'll do like, you know, window seat cushions and like she does like home decor stuff for a few like interior designers here in town. And um so she'll go in there for things like foam and zippers and all that kind of stuff. But so she hasn't seen the rifle paper in store, but they do have it online. And I'm like, good Lord, if they ever get it in person, I'm screwed.
The purple, the second parallelogram from the bottom there over your shoulder. The purple stuff, that's rifle?
Yeah.
Yeah,
This all these prints are rifle paper.
I just
So
recognize the purple, the ones that have more purple in them.
it's more of it's got pink. I
Oh,
don't know if you can see. I'm gonna get this close to you so you can see how ugly it is.
oh,
That's the little
well,
guy.
I absolutely recognize it now.
Yeah. So
Classic. Yeah.
and I did the animals on the back, the jungle babies.
Very nice.
And I think I did a good job of, yeah,
You had to piece back.
I pattern matched the seam and you can't even tell. And I was really proud of myself because it literally is like the second quilt I've ever done. But
Looks great.
thanks. It's the second quilt I long armed also. The first one was my jelly roll with my besties. And then I did this one. And I wrote stuff like in the border somewhere, it says, "Welcome to the jungle." And that's like, I like free motion long arming. I don't do anything fancy. I just meander, but like, I like being able to write stuff in my quilts. And so I'll just like put names or in my husband's flannel quilt, I wrote like little phrases that we say to each other in it. So they're kind of hidden. And I wrote like, cause I always call him AB baby. And so I wrote that in there. And so just like little hidden messages of like, I
That's
don't know.
personalization. Yeah.
Yeah.
Little
Yeah.
Easter.
Like if you can find it, cool. If not, then I know it's there. But anyway, okay, I want to know
Yeah. If you ever get tired of it hanging on the wall, it could be a quilt coat.
this one.
Yeah.
I know. I do actually, I have some Ruby Star. I have the Florida line of some of the prints to make a quilt coat out of. So
You've been thinking about.
my mom and we both have been collecting fabrics to make a quilt coat out of. So, and we modified a robe. We had like this bathrobe pattern that because she had made bathrobes for me and my Grammy one Christmas, and so cute because we matched. But we modified that and cut a pattern out of felt, I guess is what it was. But so we have it like where it's ready. It's like our size. It's gonna fit us. We know we cut it to the length we want it. And she did a test with some different fabrics and gave that to her mom because my grandma was like, I need that coat. We were like, here you go. But anyway, it's just, the time to do it because our business is so busy right now. It's like sewing for ourselves seems like a super luxury, but it's in the works. It's there.
You gotta like pencil it in. Give yourself a week. Probably won't take you that long. A couple days.
Yeah.
Schedule a quilt coat vacation.
Yeah. And I told my mom, I was like, every couple of months, we need to just schedule ourselves, like block off a week of the shop and just say, we're not working this week and just sew for fun because.
So you can still have that. Yeah.
And
for it. It's not just a job, right?
Yeah.
It's that thing you love, love, love.
Yeah. And I still love it. And I still want to sew. Yeah. It's just that time of, oh, right. I don't always have to only do business. I'm my own boss. I can decide when I work and when I don't. So
Awesome.
That's the fun part. But I do want to talk about your bag pattern that just came out, the BFF bag.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I've hinted at it in a few places,
Mhm.
but the BFF part is not, best friends forever. It's the best fucking fanny pattern, right? So
Yes.
that's the BFF part.
I love it.
So yeah, I had been wanting to make like a fanny because they're super trendy.
Mhm.
Um and it's silly because patterns aren't that expensive, but once you've got like enough experience, you think like, oh, I don't need a pattern. So I
Mhm.
had been looking at all the different patterns and I was just like, well, like that, yeah, that's good, but I would still change something. And yeah, I like this or I like. So
Mhm.
I made my own. I designed it for me. And then people were like, oh, we love it. Where can I get the pattern? I'm like, well, it's mine.
Yeah. Like, it's in my
Everyone's one.
brain.
I'm like, well, so I thought long and hard about like, am I really? Because it's the first time I'd ever put out a pattern. It's like, am I doing this? Because I don't know what I'm doing, but also
Yeah.
cool. So I had dear friend help me with the illustrations because for me that feels like the difference between like an amateur pattern that has photos in the instructions and one that's a little more polished. I had Lauren Durr do the illustrations and she did the page layout and got it all digitized. So that
Mm.
was an adventure. I learned a lot and it's the best fucking fanny
I
according to
honestly,
me.
yeah. But I think it looks amazing. I don't sew these kinds of things, but
Yeah.
it made me want to make it
Uh-huh.
because I was like reading some of your blogs about it and looking at the different mock-ups that you made and just your process of like, but I want this other thing, but I want this other thing, and adding in the details that make it more usable for you. And I was like, yeah, I would want that too. Yeah, I would want that too. And just the thought that you put into it and just how versatile and cute it is. Like,
Yeah.
so maybe I'll do a BFF and a pair of jeans this year. That'll be,
Hold you to it.
listen, okay. Just
You haven't sewn many bags at all? Like,
no, I've made like a cup the very first the very first zipper that I ever sewed was in, I think, November. And I was making just like a super basic zippy pouch.
uh-huh.
And that was the very first time I had ever sewn a zipper into anything. And so,
How was that?
and it was fine. I mean, I had my mom. I was like, okay, asking all the questions. And then once I did it once, I was like, oh, cool. And then I made a couple other little zippy pouches. Because I was trying some stuff out for the local quilt shop where I've been working a few days a week. We were doing this like we called it Christmas schoolhouse. So at the beginning of December, we had this like all these different stations make and take things. And so I was showing how you can use like do different projects like on fabric, like I was melting crayons onto fabric and then using uh like quilters vinyl to like cover it on the outside, and then I waterproofed the inside with this like gel coating stuff that you can use to make your own oilcloth essentially. And
Is that the Oda coat? Is that
yeah,
what it is? Okay, so
yeah.
I haven't gotten my hands on any. I don't know that Joanne sells it because I was over there the other day looking for a jean zipper.
Mm,
I was not satisfied with the selection, but anyway,
mm,
I wanted a specific color,
yeah,
just natural. Anyway, Oda coat had been recommended by my sister's friend, and I
yeah.
kind of wanted to look into that because I'm also doing jeans labels
Hmm.
with washable paper and I want to get the images, the text to stay nicer. So you have
Hmm.
experience with you think that would work on washable paper?
Yeah, I think it would because it would absorb into it, and because you can do it on any fabric. Like any cotton, any kind of fabric, and you just need 24 hours for it to like cure completely, and it's washable and it's still really flexible. It doesn't make it really stiff. And so I think it would still be nice to sew on there, and it would probably keep the labels nicer.
Maybe I really do need to get my hands on that.
Yeah.
Do you know what it's made of? Like, what is it? What's the magic in it? Yeah.
I don't know. I it Yeah, I don't know. It's a really thick
They
gel.
don't always say,
Yeah,
they don't necessarily want you to know, but I was
right. They're like,
curious, like,
don't read the chemicals. It's fine. But I mean, it smells nice. It doesn't have like a real strong chemically smell or anything. It kind of has like a almost like soapy kind of clean smell, in my opinion. And then yeah, you just like brush on. You can use pretty much anything, but I use those little spongy, cheapo brushes to just like do an even coat. And then after, I think after like 6 hours or something, you can paint on another layer if you need it to be thicker, if you need to like even it out.
okay.
And then you have to let it dry fully for 24 hours for it to fully cure. And then it's good to go. So you could do a whole,
I might need to try that because I was trying to stick with like stuff I had on hand or that
yeah.
more natural and less,
Mhm.
but I'm not afraid of chemicals per se. Just
Yeah.
everything's a chemical.
Yeah.
Um, but it feels better sometimes to stick with
Hmm.
the more natural, less processed stuff. But
Yeah.
I might need I might need that in my life. Eau de coat. Okay.
Yeah. I had a good time working with it. And, I sewed on the fabric that I used it on, and my mom's used it several times. Because she was making a bunch of zippy pouches as gifts like around Christmas too. And she was waterproofing the insides of bags so that they could become like, makeup bags or snack pouches or whatever. And
Wipe them out easily. Yeah.
yeah, so we've had good luck with it so far. Nobody has said like, oh, my bag leaked, or, oh, my fabric, the inside of my bag is stained now. So I don't know, it might be worth a shot to try it
Yeah.
out. And
I'll have to order some from Uncle Bezos because
yeah.
there's nowhere else to get anything around here.
Yeah. I wonder if Fat Quarter Shop or, an online quilt shop would have it or something.
Mm,
But
yeah.
who knows? Yeah, it's really cool. It's fun. And it's just a fun thing to play with because you can just make your own. Like, and I was even thinking like, because you can get those kind of like oilcloth or just like wipe off like bibs for babies, but they're like $1 million, and you could just make your own, just swipe that
Mhm.
stuff on whatever fabric you want and then make your own kind of cute little things. I don't know. There's a lot of applications for it, but
Have to get some in the stash.
yeah,
Add it to the toolbox. Yeah.
yeah, it's super cool. But anyway, so yeah, I barely have sewn with anything beyond doing quilts, and anything I have to, like I said, I made that caftan and that was easy because you just sew some rectangles. And I made the waist tie out of the selvage from that fabric because the Ruby Star selvages are so cute.
Hmm.
And I never posted a picture because I got too nervous to like post it online, even though I told Katerina I would, and then I didn't do it and I felt bad. But well, do you have like a project that you could just like make a bunch of and never get bored of it? Or do you feel
Oh
like you want to cycle through and make up different stuff all
no,
the time?
I do need to be making different stuff all the time. And I did make like 8 or 10 um, BFF bags to sell.
Hmm.
Um, and they were all different though, and lots of different details.
Hmm.
But otherwise, batch sewing is not something that I like to do. Like if I have to make 3 of something,
Hmm.
like hate every minute of it. I need to be switching gears a lot in order to be happy.
Yeah.
So I tip my hat to people who can like have a line of something and make a whole bunch of them and have a successful shop of all these beautiful things that are basically all the same.
Right.
Can't do it. Can't,
No.
I can't do it.
Yeah. I don't blame you. I think quilting can kind of get that way because you're making the same block like multiple times, and chain piecing helps because you're just busting through a bunch of, the same parts, like getting all of it done. It's assembly line and that part can kind of be mindless, so it's not so bad, I think. But like, yeah, if I had to make only ever the same exact quilt over and over again, I wouldn't do it.
Uh, yeah, it's funny though, because you can let your mind like wander a bit more when you're sewing in that gear.
Hmm.
And sometimes you need that. Like
Hmm.
sometimes I don't want to pay attention as much. So there's
Yeah.
certain things you make when you just want to think and
Yeah.
yeah, switch
Like
it
the
up.
little in between moments where there's like some mental rest of just like the mindless tasks of like snipping all the pieces apart. Like if you've chain piece, like just snipping all the connecting threads and like, trimming corners of stuff, or just those little mindless things, or like ironing the seams. Just those are like, I like that mental rest because when you're putting blocks together, you have to make sure everything's lined up right. You have to make sure that you have everything in the right order. And it is the most frustrating thing in the whole entire world when you sew a block wrong and have to undo it and redo it. So it's like,
I just thought of thinking of undoing a block because it was wrong made me
yeah.
realize I did make another quilt that I totally forgot about because I sent it to my sister.
Uh-huh.
So she has that one now. So I don't
Oh,
it was some vintage, I think it was like vintage linens that came from like mom's linen closet sort of thing,
oh.
mixed in with some different linen.
Mhm.
And it was just like long strips of stripes, but they turn corners, but I know
Mhm.
the middle of it was backwards and I didn't realize it until I put the whole thing together. I was like, this does look cool, but also something's not 100% right here. So yeah, I had to pull that one apart and
Yeah.
push that around. But
Yeah. And
yeah,
especially when you get to like the end and you think the whole thing's put together, and then you look at it and you're like, oh shit. Like you just see that one glaring error. You're like, I can't believe I did that. I feel like such an idiot, but it happens to the best of us.
nothing a seam ripper can't fix.
Yeah. It's just the most annoying thing in the whole world. Like, no, it needs to be perfect when I do it the first time.
Where's the fun in that?
Yeah, I know. I know. Yeah. I think though, too, those mistakes really just help you learn, and you have to make them to be able to grow
Oh,
from your craft. And
right. Um, big fan of fucking around and finding out myself. I mean, I could
me
read
too.
the instructions. I could read the instructions, but
Yeah,
making the mistake is sort of a better learning experience most of the time.
I
That's
know.
more memorable for sure.
Yeah. And, as a former teacher, I have to live by those words because that's just the whole thing, right? Like you got to make those mistakes to learn. You can't do everything right the very first time. And if you do, you're a robot. So whatever.
Right,
But
right. My husband makes fun of me because like he's the super cautious one. It's like
mm,
the kids they're not old enough to learn to use a knife. I'm like, come on, they can
yeah.
start cutting some vegetables, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so he's the super cautious one. And I'm like, well, they're not gonna understand how sharp a knife is until they cut themselves like I don't
Hmm.
want them to get hurt, but
Right.
that's really how you learn to handle a
Yeah.
knife or cook on the
Yeah.
stove. You're gonna get burned
Hmm.
at some point. I
Hmm.
mean,
Yeah. But it's like if you're there guiding them and teaching them the skills and showing them the proper way to hold a knife instead of them just winging it when they get frustrated one day, like,
great.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's funny. But well, thank you for joining me today. I
It's
super
been fun.
appreciate
Let's
this.
just end on kids with knives.
Yeah, I mean, why not?
Totally awesome place to just wrap things up
But the
and
lesson is to fuck around and find out.
fuck around and find out. Yep.
I'm here for it. So I say it all the time. I've got my husband saying it now, so it's good.
Okay.
It's all good.
Well, I didn't die. I
No,
survived
you,
this interview. This
yeah.
thing that's going on YouTube. I survived
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Thank you. I'm super happy you agreed to, and let's keep in touch. And I promise I'll make jeans this year.
And quilt coat and a bag
A BFF bag.
with some hardware. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
gonna do it.
Awesome.
Cool. All
Thank
right. Well,
you.
we'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Okay, bye.